Round two, y'all. I want to show you a couple of different techniques. The first one is glazing. So I'm going to take a little bit of this orange. That's actually the base, the mass tone for that orange, and I'm going to work off of that. So it's helpful if you save your palette. Put a little bit of wet paper towel here, fold it up, wrap it with saran wrap. So from session to session, you have these paints still mixed. I still have my apple, my lime green, the orange from the peach, the orange from the orange itself, and I can intermix these two, which is nice because if you see some of the shadows or maybe some of the areas where it's darker underneath the mango or the orange here, what you can do is mix complementary contrasting colors. So I can mix some of my orange, my yellow orange, with my blue green to give me some of those shadow colors, or where it goes curves under and looks brownish or goes darker. So I'm going to take a little bit of this orange and I'll mix it with some white to do some of my highlights. So took some of that orange, it's the mass tone. I'm going to take some of the white and this is going to be my highlights. Again, we're working general to specific. We're going to not get overly detailed on this and then finish this one and then finish this one. We're going to work them each in degrees of completion. I'm going to make this orange a little bit lighter, and remember I can take a little sample card and do like a little drag down and see how this looks. So drag this down and then to go compare up here to say my highlights, like this area right here, kind of squint at it. It's still a little dark, so I'm going to add a little bit more white to it. And as these dry, they darken up a little bit as well. So I'm going to add a touch more white to it. Here, add some more white. And again, what I could do is start to see how it mixes first and then mix it with the entire color to see if it's going in the right direction. And then test this color. And what's nice about this is maybe I see it somewhere else. That's why I want you to work general to specific. So maybe it's in part of your peach as well over here, or maybe it's in part of the mango right there. So you can start to compare. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good for my peach too. So what I'm going to show you here first is glazing. So I'm going to take this orange that I've just mixed. I'm going to take a softer flat brush like this. And you can kind of see if it's going to work good, because as you do like this, does it hold its shape? Does it kind of go back? Sometimes you have a brush and you go like this and it doesn't really hold its shape all that well. This isn't probably going to work as well. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to get just a little bit of paint on the brush like so, and then I'm going to get most of it off. Just going to knock it off so that there's barely any on there. Then this, for dry brushing, what I'm going to do is just very, very lightly work up some highlights like so. The technique of dry brushing is also called scumbling. So basically what you're doing is taking a little bit of paint and scumbling it across the surface so that some of the original color still peeks through. So you can see that I'm doing that there. There's a little bit of a highlight here. You can see that. And it is barely applying any paint. Little by little, we're building this up. This is called dry brush or scumbling. Remember to follow the shape of the orange. Don't kind of paint like this, flat. Rather kind of imagine that you're brushing over the orange itself and kind of imagine what that feels like there. So now this is dry brush here. I'm also going to show you glaze. So I'm going to take this same paint and I'm going to add a little bit of what's called open gel. Basically, this makes this acrylic act more like a oil-based paint without changing the color. And I only want to add a very little amount of this. So I'm going to put a little paint over here. I'm just going to take just a dab of this. You could also use matte medium. You could also use water for this too. But with glazing, kind of a similar principle is happening here, where I am making my paint a little bit more transparent. So basically, if I paint, let's use this as an example. Watch this, when I paint over this, it's fairly transparent. You see that? It's just changing it a little bit. Whereas if I took the straight up opaque paint here and painted it over top of it like that, boom, it completely covers it. You see that? See the difference here? Glazing, opaque. So this is more solid, especially since it has white in it. White is going to make a paint much more opaque, and it's not going to be as transparent or translucent. But if I add this glazing material like matte medium, or if I add a drop of water to it, what we can do is we can start to build up the tone slowly like this. So I'm going to use this on my peach over here and just kind of pull some of the highlights here. And we're going to use some glazing on the sides here. And I'm still kind of curving around this form and doing a little bit of glazing here. Maybe I notice it over here as well as one of the highlights. And so I'm just going to glaze over top of this, like so, still trying to follow the form itself to get that highlight. And then, you know, kind of anywhere you see it, you can get a little bit of shading happening. Notice that the orange on orange isn't going to make as big of a difference. It's going to work slower, as opposed to if you work over top of a darker color. It's going to give you a bigger contrast, more of a shift. And if any of this goes in a direction that you don't want, see how I'm just gently shading that with a little bit of glaze onto the paint itself. If it ever goes too far and say, oh, you know what, I just killed that. Terrible, that's awful, now I just ruined that whole thing. It's okay, we've got some of our original color here. And this red, what I did is I mixed a little bit of my red with a little bit of green to give it more of a brownish, which you can see kind of here. So what I could do is I could just take this now and just go right back over it if I've gone too far. And I can even use almost like a dry brush technique here to get some of that shine back and to lessen the effect of maybe this was too abrupt of a change. So like that. You'll also notice that as I was working, I left a little bit of the green. I said, you know, that green as the underpainting actually makes sense in part of the mango. So let's leave that. And there's also this nice challenge right here of this textural indentation. So I'm going to kind of have to develop that as I go. It's like got a highlight underneath it. And then with a little bit of glaze, we'll make that look dimensional here, and we'll keep coming back to that. But I just wanted to show you those techniques. Dry brushing and scumbling is one, and then the other is glazing. So scumbling or dry brush and glazing, which you can use matte medium. You can use, this is open gel that Golden makes, or you could use water. So I'm going to continue this painting doing the same type of thing, working first each highlight on all of these lights and then going into the darks. At some point, I'm going to paint my white background. I don't want you to get too far on this and neglect your background, because that can throw off your values, especially if this were black and I was kept the white canvas. And my final touch is, okay, done with the fruit, let's paint the black background now. You'll realize, oh shoot, that really changes the value structure of all of these fruits and vegetables. So I'm going to put that background in as I start to work. And you'll notice what I've been doing over here is just laying out a little bit of color, because that background isn't completely white. If I squint, I'll notice some blues, some greens, some pinks in different sections, and I'm going to do my white over top of it. If you see a color and it's like, you'll notice that I left some of the original color, like here is that magenta-like color underneath the lime, or here right along the edge. As you're painting, if this just sort of feels right to leave some of your underpainting come through, go ahead and do that. That's a great skill to be able to jump to the next step and start to do some of that shading. So I'm going to continue on to work on this, and you'll see it in the time lapse. But basically what I'm going to do is use the colors that I already have, like my peach color here, and I'm going to mix like 3 or 4 versions of that. You'll see that there's kind of some mango color in my peach as well. So like I could start to lay some of that out here. You'll see that, you know, it's a little bit darker up here and on the edge of it as well. And I can do a little bit of dry brushing to build that up. There's a little bit of a texture, which you could do the texture kind of with a dry brush as well. So I'm going to get most of this off, and I can kind of go across here and give myself a sense of texture, just working really, really slow, building this up. And you'll see that before you know it, you're starting to get the sense of that skin that like, it has kind of like this milky texture to it where you see like a couple of different colors at once. You're not going to do that all in one attempt. So it's basically slowly building things up and doing some of that dry brush technique. So I'm going to develop this. I'm going to continue to work on this. Peace.